When we talk about podcast backlinks for SEO, we're normally talking about the distribution platforms, so Podbean, SoundCloud, anything like that, where you can basically just get a no-follow link on those platforms where there's some benefit, probably not a lot of benefit, but it's something that's good for your expertise, experience, authority, and trust. And just generally, there is this argument that even no-follow links, if you've got ultimately a volume of links, then it's all positive as long as none of them are toxic. But here's a link building strategy for actually getting real high-quality homepage backlink largely for free. So I've worked with this podcast before. I actually own it. And the idea was basically when I was focusing on high-ticket coaches, basically I've always had this fixation with it. What's basically the highest leverage I can get, the highest value product I can sell with SEO, and basically information and training is definitely up there. So a lot of these coaches are saying $10,000, $20,000 programs. So for a while, that was my niche in my branding. So I started a podcast where it ran entirely without me. So I hired a host, created SOPs, and basically got a few VAs on my team to work on reaching out to guests and then following up afterwards. Now, as part of that follow-up afterwards, I knew that we were featuring these people and we wanted them to promote the podcast as much as possible. So, of course, we encouraged them to share on social media. We even gave them tips for sharing on social media, like don't just paste the link on Facebook because the reach will be absolutely hammered. Post this thumbnail as an image and then leave the link in the comments and just tell people to go to the link in the comments, and that way you'll get much better reach on social media. But we also created for them an as seen in badge with the podcast logo. And we basically encouraged them to actually place this on their homepage. Because of course, if you're going out there getting featured in podcasts, it's good for your overall trust and reputation. You want to feature anywhere you've been mentioned, and that will generally go on the homepage, especially if you've not been featured in Forbes and Business Insider yet. So quite often, a small but reputable podcast will actually be just a nice little thing to add to your homepage. But from our perspective, we love homepage backlinks. Remember that the homepage tends to get more backlinks than any other page on a website. So any brand or business, they're doing all this PR, they'll typically get brand mentions, and that will generally link to the homepage rather than the checkout page, the buy now page, anything like that. So because of that, if you can get a link from a homepage, that tends to be much more powerful than a link from an inner page. The only difficulty is it's very difficult to get homepage backlinks unless you're going straight to a PBN and buying that way, so proper black hat links, or you found a webmaster who is willing to sell you a link on their homepage. But that typically comes at high cost, sometimes hundreds, even thousands per year, normally as a rental. But with the system, we were able to just reach out to coaches, feature them on the podcast, and then afterwards would reach out and they would then place the as seen in badge on their homepage. So none of these links are particularly powerful. We've got 41, a 20, 16, 15, and a few others. They are topically relevant because obviously we've featured them on our podcast because they're in the same industry as we are, and they're not linking out to everyone. So we're actually getting a lot of power from that link as well. I say that a lot of these are not homepage backlinks, but still not a problem, still very good quality backlinks. So your main hesitation might well be, but surely running a podcast is expensive. Absolutely not. Now, I was very clear that I was not going to be running this podcast myself. I wanted to outsource a lot. So I hired a podcast host and they were $30 per hour. Episode tends to be an hour, maybe a bit longer for editing. So let's call that $50 per episode. The rest of it was a virtual assistant. You can get a good VA for $5, $7 an hour, something like that. Let's say $7 there. It takes less than an hour for a single guest to have been reached out to, followed up with, and then delivered the badge at the end. So let's say $5 per episode in that case. And then we've got things like Zoom recording, website hosting, things like that. But these are just general costs of running the podcast overall. So if we maybe bring that to something like $20 per month. So even then, we're looking at less than $80 per backlink for a high quality backlink from a genuine source. And don't forget, these people, they're not going to respond to outreach inquiries. So there's no other way to get a link on these websites. So these are truly unique backlinks that your competitors just aren't going to be able to get hold of. So at $80 per backlink, I would just rinse and repeat. Have your host interview people all day, every day. Get your VA to actually try and pitch people who have a higher domain rating, because then you know you can get a more valuable backlink from that guest. This is before any of the other advantages of running a podcast. If we're focusing purely on backlinks, then we're getting decent, often homepage backlinks for less than $80 per go.